time is valuable. That's why Lowe's Blueprint Takeoffs turn blueprints into quotes faster. Bring us your plans, and we'll generate itemized material lists to make quoting easier so you can get back to building. Plus, at the Lowe's Pro Desk, you get access to thousands of building materials not sold in store. And when your order's ready, we'll deliver everything to the job site. Improving is easy at Lowe's.
Hello and welcome, everyone, to the Priority Lane podcast, the show where we explore the power of prioritizing and how it can be used to achieve real growth by doing less, but doing it better. I will be your host today. My name is Lawrence. I'm country manager for My Brokers app. This is in the absence of Nigel Catt, our usual host, who is currently in the outback, I believe, attempting to reenact certain scenes from Crocodile Dundee, a rather successful 80s film. It remains to be seen if he will be successful at that reenactment, as I don't quite believe Nigel has the physiology, shall we say, to succeed in the sorts of stunts that Paul Hogan did in that film. Only time will tell. So if he returns home with missing limbs or something like that, we'll know that he lost an encounter with a saltwater crocodile. Anyway, thanks for joining. I'd like to firstly thank the team behind the Priority Lane podcast and My Brokers who have invited me to host this solo session, just to drill down on a few things that Nigel and I discussed in my last podcast with him about the human element in business, which, as ever, is always hugely important. As I firmly believe that people are the source and technology is the tool. There's not a computer in the world that built itself. I know that they're all self-learning now with the obviously the advent of AI and that technology advancing. But without humans, it wouldn't be programmed and it wouldn't be able to respond. So we are the key. We are number one, and I'd like to push that. So anyway, thank you to the team for inviting me to do this. I wanted to touch on a number of things. Firstly, I know that Nigel and I discussed how trust was a key element for many businesses and obviously people in general in our everyday lives. And for me, the trust issue, I have a good analogy here. I actually had a conversation on the phone with a new prospect, a managing director of a financial services business that My Brokers could certainly work with and help. And interestingly, he told me he's been in business for 3 decades, similar to myself. Um, and he said when I asked him if he had opened the information that I had sent him uh, previously, he told me that his actual words were, "If I opened everything, Lawrence, I'd get nothing done. So I don't open anything." And I went, "Okay, I understand." And I obviously I can understand that you're not going to sit there and just trawl through unsolicited prospects and emails from people you don't know. That's obviously we know that's the case. However, from the human element side, I did feel somewhat that he was kind of missing a trick, and it was somewhat closed mindset because how can you know that a product or service that you might not know of could actually help you or streamline your business if you're not willing to to entertain the idea or listen. He did say to me, however, that the only way that he would ever consider something new, for example, would be if it was recommended to him by either a member of his in-house team, of course, or a peer, someone he's known for decades. Which again, I totally understood. So I suggested to him, I said, okay, well, on that premise, would you mind if I resent that information and whilst we're on the phone, you forward it to someone you trust in your team so they can have a look at it. If they like it, great. If they don't, that's great too. And he agreed. So that's how we moved forward. Um, so for me, yes, the trust, of course, is important. And actually, what I'd like any of you to do is, if you've got any comments or theories or opinions on the trust issue, because I'm wondering, and I'm going to ask you, do you believe it is a generational, or dare I say, it, an age related uh, symptom, shall we say, or do you think that that is, that's a good methodology to follow, to not open anything just in case it takes up too much of your time? So please send some comments, or you can email me. All my details will be either at the end of this show, or you can find them on the mybrokers.app website. So please take a look at that. So trust, obviously, a key thing. Um, the other side of this that I think we also all forget, you know, humans are made up of, basically, we are a bag of water, effectively, and we have more uh, electromagnetic synaptic connections in the body than there are galaxies in the universe, and there are over about 2 trillion galaxies. Okay, so the body is a really complex machine. 65, 70% water, something like that. Bit of organs, things help you, live, breathe, etc. Um, but obviously, the body has a number of sensory applications, should we call it? So we know that the common five, sight, smell, taste, auditory, hearing, touch. Um, we also, I believe, we have seven. So the other two, the sixth sense, of course, is ESP, where you're able to uh, predict or see things happen before they do. And for me, the seventh one is actually to feel. So what I mean by that is, it's like intuition. If you've ever walked into a room um, where there are people and you feel suddenly uncomfortable, or you might be talking to someone and you'll get the sense that this person doesn't like me, those two feelings, I promise you, were probably correct. And this is something, so that seventh sense that I'm talking about is something that we all disregard as mumbo jumbo. But trust me, I'm pretty sure most of you have walked into somewhere and felt a little uneasy, uncomfortable, or something like that. And you should listen to that, because that is your inner self going, hang on a minute. It's a little bit like the Star Trek Enterprise using its sensor array. Well, we have that in abundance. So yeah, listen to that. And I have a really good. This is a true story. Uh, I was selling a house many years ago, and the buyer and the estate agent and apparently their insurer were coming round, and I'd never had to witness an insurer coming round to check the doors or windows and that sort of thing. But what I did before they got there is, we had a log burner, so I put that on. Uh, we had an old filter coffee machine, um, so I put that on. And I also had a bread maker, so I mixed up the yeast and the flour, etc. And I put the bread maker on, which takes about 3 hours or something like that. So when they eventually arrived, the home was lovely and warm. It was redolent with the odor of soft, logwood smoke, fresh coffee, and fresh baked bread. And of course, I also put a bowl of fruit on the table and polished the apples, um, so that when they walked in, their sensory uh, applications on their body were overloaded. Okay. And needless to say, and this is true, the guy bought the house. Now, I'm not saying he bought it because of those sensory cues that I had obviously on purpose placed in my home, but I know for a fact that they absolutely carried weight. And what's more important is that I offered them a cup of coffee, so they had the taste as well. So I was ticking off all the sensory applications that the human body has, and pretty much he sold the house to himself, and I didn't need to actually do anything. So, um, what I'm trying to say is use your senses, to your advantage. They're there for a reason. So we are no longer primal creatures that use them to go hunting or to for defense, that sort of thing. So use them to the good. I think it's hugely important. um so yeah, and the other thing I read somewhere the other day was that, were people inherently good? I think the question was. um and I understand at this current time, around the world, there are unfortunate, war zones and, you know, hostile environments, which are just, for me, humans who've been at war constantly, apparently, for nearly 10,000 years. And I kind of think it's time to stop, because there's no benefit at all to the actual human species. It just creates hostility and that sort of thing. Um, but in the back of my mind, I thought, well, COVID is a great example of, I think, how people need people, because we were all isolated. We were all, told to stay at home, which we diligently did. But I also know that we then, I suppose that the government, particularly here in England, they realised that, people were isolated and they needed a support network, people to talk to. They needed company. Okay, and so very quickly, our, what were they called? It was a bubble. Your safety bubble was put in place where you were able to, travel and meet, one specific pod of people, not dolphins. And I find this, I found that encouraging, that, it was, we people need people. So, and we had to get involved, with networking still, and that sort of thing. Within the events industry, for example, people, obviously the face-to-face events couldn't work, so they put together lots of webinars and, all the sort of online stuff, which worked great, but it was still connecting people. So I think that's vastly important and something that we should all remember. Um, and again, to quote another film from the 80s with the late Patrick Swayze, who played a bouncer in a film called Roadhouse. I think his character's name was Dalton, and his piece of advice to his team of bouncers who were going to help him clear up the town was, be nice. And of course, that drew, as you can imagine, a certain level of disdain from, these muscle bound jerks who were helping him, I suppose. Um, but yeah, his advice was, or philosophically, I suppose it was be nice. And I think that's two words that we could all perhaps try harder to use. And in business, it doesn't mean you're weak. If you show some empathy, if you listen, if you are nice. I mentioned before, I think that, I found that managing directors and CEOs, people who've been in business, male and female, of course, um, who've been in business a long time, many decades, uh, they kind of have sometimes a sort of standoffish, I'm too important to, talk to you, if you're the sales manager, or a regional business development manager, or whatever it is. And I find that quite sad. And I do believe in leading by example. And Nigel, the chief executive of the Blackbridge Group, and my broker's app, of course, is, as I said, he's a lovely chap. And the thing I love about Nigel is that he's happy to talk to anybody. He speaks quietly. He has a lovely energy. He's very calm. And I think that is an absolute perfect model of, I think, of how someone, in a, executive level, should really behave. But, you can't change everybody, and you can't convince people who've been doing things a certain way for many, many years, to change. They have to want to do that. So, what can I say? Surround yourself with people that want the best out of you and that you want the best out of them. Listen to each other. Be nice, obviously, and do what you say. Something else that I mentioned in my previous podcast is, if you tell a client, you tell a family member, whatever it is, that you're going to do something, when, where, or how, please do that. Because that's your integrity, that's your reputation, and all these things add up. Um, so yeah, so that's pretty much it from me. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, but use your senses, be aware, and try trusting a little bit more, if you can. Because there are lovely people out there who have incredible solutions and services and products that we could all benefit from. So don't be frightened or dig your heels in. You know, take a chance and listen. And I think, all I can do now is to leave you with one of my favorite pieces of advice, words to live by, everyone, is never upset anyone who has access to your toothbrush. I think you'll figure it out. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Lawrence. This is the Priority Lane podcast, and we'll see you soon. Cheerio.
This episode is sponsored by My Brokers app, a white label app built specifically for financial advisors and wealth management professionals. If you want to know how you can have your own app exclusively for your business and your clients up and running by this time next week, visit mybrokers.app or download the free My Brokers demo app from your favorite app store.